Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the criminal law class. Today, inshallah, we will discuss the effects of ignorance, mistake, and forgetfulness on accountability. Now, before that, there is another factor in accountability, which is the intention. And this is very interesting topic because in principle you are not held responsible for something that you did not intend. As the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are only judged by intentions. So how would you be liable for something you did not intend for? This would be very important and interesting topic for research, along with the maxims, especially the first one that we discussed about the intention, from a criminal perspective. But now we will move to the effects of ignorance. And the basis here is also the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. And we were not punishing till we send a messenger. This ayah declares that you will not be held accountable if you did not receive the message. How would you be liable for something that you had no knowledge of? So, of the principles of Sharia is that the offender is accountable for commission of a forbidden act when he fully knows that the act is unlawful. When you fully know that this act is unlawful, what's the ruling? Then you are liable. If you did not know, you are not liable. That is the principle of Sharia. But to what extent this principle is exercised? To what limit you are not liable? Sometimes you don't know, but you are still liable. And that's identical with the current law, with the man-made law, which is, it's known as the ability to knowledge. You were able to know things that you should not be ignorant of, even if in reality you were ignorant of, but you are still liable. Now, someone came and said, I don't know, Salah is mandatory. Would he be liable for leaving the Salah, punishable, or we say you are excused? Why liable? It's truly he did not know that Salah is mandatory. How could he doesn't know? In the state of Islam, in Darul Islam, scholars say ignorance is not acceptable in the well-known things. Who would be accepted for ignorance and the liability would be removed from him? Even if he said that prayer is not mandatory, the one who lives away from the state of Islam, or the one who just accepted Islam, there is no way for him to know the rulings. Okay? So, the possibility of knowledge, the ability to know, is sufficient for holding you responsible. Even in the law. Now, are we experts in the man-made law? Are you an expert or no?
No.
No. Otherwise you would be what? Lawyer. Right? But will you be accountable for breaking the law? Even if you did not know? Why? Why? Because you are able to know. For instance, you want to drive. You are responsible for every action is caused by driving, even if you did not really know what you are doing. Why? Because you have the ability to know. You have access to know. And therefore, you are responsible. So your ignorance here would not be sufficient. as an excuse. But on the other hand, if you were confined in a place, in a remote location, without any possibility of knowing, would you be liable then? Yes or no? How would you know? Now, I think even in the man-made law, I don't know to what extent this is applicable, but if the judge knew for certainty that you had no way of knowing this law, let's say, for instance, a law that was legislated only yesterday, and today you committed the violation of that law, and there was no announcement, unlike, for instance, the laws about gas or about these other common things. You did not know. The law was passed yesterday. Today it became effective, and you had no way to know it, and you were in violation. Would you be acquitted? Would you be excused? Or you will be held accountable? In the man-made law, I don't know, but Islamically, you are excused. You are excused. Now, this is in regards to ignorance. What about mistake? The same thing. Are you held responsible for things that you did wrong? Yes or no? In Islam, what does the Quran say? What does Allah say in the Quran? رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا, O Allah, do not hold us responsible, accountable, if we إِن نَسِينَا, if we forgot, أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا, or we erred. What does that mean? Are you responsible for the mistakes? Did you intend or you did not intend? Yes or no? If you intended, then it is not a mistake. But since it is a mistake, that means you did not intend it. So, this should mean you are not held accountable. Mistakes means, or the mistake means, occurrence of an event without being intended. Something that you did without the intention. So when we talk about the criminal aspect, because even this topic is a long topic for research in fiqh in regards to mistakes. Are you held responsible or no? Someone prayed 3 instead of 4 by mistake. Someone violated rituals, one of the rituals of Hajj by mistake. And the list goes on and on. But here we are talking about criminal aspect. You did not intend to commit this act. What is an example for this? You are hunting. Okay? You aimed at a duck. But instead of shooting the duck, what did you shoot? A man. Did you intend to shoot that man? No. Why? Because even the bullet that is used, it's used for what? For ducks. It is a small pellets. It's not, but it killed that man. It killed that man. How you will be tried? Mistakes generate accountability, just like in this case. Why? Because life, blood, money is protected by all means. But accountability for mistake is exceptional, because the general rule is what? You are forgiven or you're not forgiven for mistake.
Forgiven.
You are forgiven. Another example, let me tell you another example. If you were asleep and you rolled over a baby and that baby was killed, How you will be tried? As a murderer? But your act resulted in what? Taking the life of an innocent person. So, in order to understand this issue, we need to know what are the kinds of mistake. We have a prohibited act that is generated or derived from legitimate act. What is the legitimate act? Hunting. Are you allowed to hunt? Are you or aren't you?
Yes.
You are allowed to hunt. Are you allowed to kill someone? You hunted, so you killed someone. Commission of an unlawful act. To begin with, you did unlawful act, but that was a mistake. How would that be possible? I will give you an example. You are wedding. You are marrying. On the day of wedding, you entered the room thinking that she is your wife, and she was not. Is that act lawful or unlawful? Unlawful. How it happened? By mistake. This is different than the previous one. Or, in the book, there is an interesting thing called mistake of personality and mistake of identity. This is something very interesting. What do we mean by this? Mistake of personality. You intend to kill Muhammad, but you aimed at Muhammad, and who got killed? Ahmad. Or, on the other hand, now which one is this? This is the mistake of identity. How it is the mistake of the personality? You were told to kill the murderer. You went and you took him and you killed him. Then you were told that was not the one you are supposed to kill. Is there a difference between them? Many scholars said no. There is no difference. It is one mistake. Other scholars said yes, there is a mistake, including Imam Malik. There is difference. He said mistake by identity, you are tried as deliberate killing because the killing was intended from the beginning. You were just wrong with the person. While in personality, you are allowed to killing, but you made a mistake. You understand? This is the difference. Some scholars said there is no difference. In both cases, you are wrong. Now, another division for the mistake, again, we can go long list in the mistakes. There is what is a mistake by itself, and there is what is indirect mistake. Remember the killing by reason? Killing by reason, how it happens? The act itself, is it allowed or not allowed? Digging a well to drink water from it, is it allowed or no? It is allowed, but it resulted in killing a person. You dug a well in the night, one was walking, he did not know there is a well here, he drowned in that well, and he died. Is it similar to the one that dug a well or dug a hole to bury the criminal by the order of the judge, and that person did not pass by, but the other one passed by? All scholars agreed that the indirect mistake does not take the ruling of the mistake. It is attached to it, but it has a lesser consequences. Let's read from the book to clarify this more. Open the book. Page 140, please. Open the book, page 140. Issue 301. Issue 301. Turn on the mic.
Bismillah.
Go ahead.
Bismillah. According to the Sharia, there are two kinds of mistakes, generated and non-generated.
Generated and non-generated.
Generated mistakes. A mistake is that which stems from a legitimate act or from an act which the agent may have considered legitimate. An indirect act may also constitute a generated mistake. For instance, a person aims an arrow at a bird, but it hits a human being, or if a soldier shoots an arrow at a man among the enemy troops wearing the enemy uniform, believing him to be a soldier of the hostile forces. But later on it is revealed that the victim was his compatriot. A mistake may be committed as a casual factor too. For instance, someone digs a pit on the thoroughfare without obtaining permission of a competent authority and without taking necessary precautions to save the passers by from falling into it. Any mistake other than one generated is a non-generated mistake.
Delinquent.
A guilty person may be guilty of it directly. For instance, a person turning in his sleep crushes to death by a child lying by. A non-generated mistake may also be committed indirectly of casually. In such a case, the delinquent serves as a casual factor leading to the commission of a mistake. For example, a person digs a well on the thoroughfare and a wayfarer falls into it. Or takes another example, a person heaps stones on the thoroughfare and a wayfarer collides with it and dies. Generated mistake committed directly is called by some jurists only mistake, while others give it the name of pure mistake. Non-generated mistakes directly committed as well as generated and non-generated mistakes casually committed are, on the other hand, technically termed as errors subject to mistake injunction. There are some jurists, however, who do not classify mistakes into different categories and call all the inadvertent acts mistakes.
What's the difference between pure mistake and mistake only? Now, some mistakes are generated due to negligence. But some mistakes that happened and you could not do nothing about them. You did your best and it still happened. This all helps the judge determining what kind of punishment, penal punishment, would be applied, if there is any, in this kind.
Just go on.
Yeah, basis of mistake.
Basis of mistake. The basis of mistake in the Islamic Sharia is negligence and carelessness, but the accountability...
Negligence and carelessness.
But the accountability of a delinquent one guilty of mistake does not presuppose habitual negligence on his part. The only condition of his accountability in a generated mistake is negligence. In other case, however, it is presumed that the delinquent is habitually negligent. He cannot therefore escape accountability unless it is proved that he was forced to commit the mistake. The jurists have two criteria of delinquency, i.e. to judge whether or not a person is guilty of mistake. The first test of accountability in the case of mistake is that a prohibited act stems from a legitimate act of the delinquent or from an act which he considers legitimate. He will be criminally accountable for such an act whether he commits it directly or causes it to be committed, provided that if it is proved that it could have been avoided by him. If he could not have avoided it at all, then he is not blameworthy. The second test is commission of an unlawful act by the delinquent himself or the causation of such an act by him unless it is absolutely essential to do so. The act in question would be treated as uncalled for and the delinquent will have to account for it, whether or not he could have possibly avoided it.
The next issue, mistaken person and mistaken identity. 304.
Mistaking a person means that the offender intends to kill a definite person but killed someone else instead. Mistaken identity means that the offender intends to kill a person mistaking him, say for Tom, the person he actually wanted to kill. But later it's revealed that the victim was Dick and not Tom. Mistaken person and mistaken identity constitute two categories of generated mistakes. Mistaking a person actually involves an act of criminal error. For instance, the delinquent shoots an arrow at the intended victim but it hits someone else. This is an act of mistake stemming from an act intended by the delinquent. Mistaken identity, on the other hand, involves conjectural error of the agent originating from his intention. For example, the delinquent shoots an arrow aiming it at Tom, but later it's found to have hit Dick. This is actually an error inherent in the intention of the delinquent. The mistake in such a case springs from his conjecture and intention. The jurists differ on the question of mistaken person and mistaken identity. Some of them treat the delinquent as one willfully guilty, while others hold him accountable as one erroneously guilty.
What does that mean? What will be the difference in punishment for the one who was mistaken for identity or the one who was mistaken by person? What would be the difference? For jurists who say there is difference, they say the mistake that was only in the person and the intent was the same, to kill, then this is a deliberate killing. You are not tried as a murderer who will be killed for killing a soul, but you will be tried as semi-deliberate killing. While on the other hand, we say this is a mistake. And remember, in the diya, in the blood money, is there a difference or they are the same? There is difference. There is difference. The diya for the semi-deliberate killing is what? Similar to the deliberate killing. While the diya for the mistake is lesser value. The same amount, it's 100 camels, but it is what? It is of a different value. So this is, again, this is interesting. It could happen. And the beautiful thing is when you make the comparison between this and the man-made law. What kinds of mistakes are forgiven and what kinds of mistakes are not forgiven? Because in many cases, mistakes are not forgiven. That's why people have insurance. That's why people have lots of protection measures, just in case something wrong happens, they are in the safe side. While in Islam you are already protected, but you are not protected against negligence. If you were negligent, if you could do something better, you are still not a deliberate killer, murderer, but you will be tried differently than if you did it by a pure mistake. The next thing that will affect the judgment of a punishment is forgetfulness. Forgetfulness. And the basis here is what? Again, the ayah, رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the pen is lifted on the one who forgets. What do we mean by forgetfulness here? It means not to be able to remember a thing when it is required. You were required to do that thing, but you what? You forgot. Now, in the current world that we live in, are you held accountable for forgetfulness or no? Are you or aren't you? You are. Right? But in Islam, are you or aren't you? In terms of ibadat, you are not. You are excused. But in terms of the criminal law, and that's what is important, that's what we need to check on, and that's why let's read the next issue about forgetfulness of mistake of forgetfulness. The accountability of forgetfulness.
Forgetting means not to be able to remember a thing when required. The Sharia just opposes forgetting with mistake. Says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Baqarah, ayah 286, Our Lord, do not punish us if we forget or mistake.
رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَّسِينَا وَأَخْطَأْنَا.
And the Holy Prophet ﷺ brings us the tiding, my ummah has been forgiven for forgetting and mistakes. The jurists
Okay, that's not the issue. The issue is to what extent.
Okay.
Forgetfulness is an excuse.
The jurists differ on the question of the effect of forgetting on accountability. Some of them hold that forgetting is a common excuse for lapses in worship and for exemption from punishment. The general principle of the Sharia in this regard is that if anyone does an act unmindfully, he is no sinner and therefore deserves no punishment. But if the unmindful person is exempted from criminal accountability, his civil accountability is not nullified. For the Sharia treats the life and property of human beings as blameless, and the excuse as admitted of in the Sharia in the case of a person who forgets does not come into conflict with the protection guaranteed for life and property. What this view comes to is that if the offender forgets that the act he is going to commit is unlawful and commits it notwithstanding, he will not be liable for punishment, but his unmindfulness does not invalidate the obligations incurred by his act.
See, even in the fiqh rulings, scholars differed. If you forgot to do something, what should you do? Do you have to do it, or you are already forgiven? Some scholars said you are forgiven for the sin, but not for the commission of the act. You still have to do the act. While others say no, then there is no meaning for forgetfulness. But when it comes to the criminal law, let's say someone forgot and did not turn off the electricity circuit, and someone was shocked by this electricity, electrified, and he died. Why he died? You just forgot, and it could happen. Are you accountable for that or no?
Yeah.
Do you pay the blood money? Of course. Why? Here it has no effect. It doesn't have effect. You are still responsible. Person, money, property, all this is protected by the Sharia. But if someone deliberately kept on the circuit, so you would be electrified, you would be killed, that's deliberate killing, while here it is not the case. It's only a mistake out of forgetfulness. Okay, go on.
In fact, he has to fulfill those obligations when he realizes his transgression, or else he would be awarded the prescribed punishment. There are other jurists who think that forgetting is an excuse for punishment in the hereafter, since punishment in that life presupposes intention of the offender. According to them, forgetting is no excuse for the application of injunctions to mundane affairs, save those pertaining to the rights of Allah. In the event of a violation of divine rights, forgetting is to be treated as an excuse only when a natural motive of the commission of crime exists, while there is nothing to remind the transgressor of the unlawfulness of the act he is about to commit. For instance, in eating and drinking unmindfully when one is fasting, a natural tendency is at work, but there is at the same time nothing to remind the transgressor of the unlawfulness of his act. But in the case of a violation of the right of an individual, forgetting can on no account be acceptable as an excuse. Doubtless,
Okay.
Sorry?
Do you understand this example? Okay, go on.
Doubtless, there do exist such crimes as relate to the rights of Allah, such as adultery and drinking. But it may be said of them that such cases are rare, wherein forgetting is accepted as a lawful excuse. For a prohibited act is seldom forgotten. Moreover, there is a condition that a natural motive should be at work behind the criminal act the unmindful offender is going to commit, while there is nothing to remind him of its unlawfulness. Suppose, for example, a person who is recently converted to Islam feels thirsty and drinks wine unlawfully. Or, take another example, a man divorces his wife but unmindfully enters into sexual intercourse with her. In the light of both the views discussed above, a mere contention of mindfulness or forgetting is not enough for the exculpation of
Having intimate relation with a divorced woman, what does it mean? It is adultery.
Yeah.
But why would it be an excuse here? This is a woman that used to be your wife, so you are used to have this act with her, and that's why you forgot. The same thing with the example of the man who recently accepted Islam. He is used to what? To drinking. While this example is not true for someone who is Muslim, because you're not used to drink. And if you go to the judge and you say, I forgot, what should he do? Maybe you really forgot, but you should be punished. Why? Because it's very, very rare, and the rare has no ruling.
So in these two cases, they're punished, right?
In those two cases, what do you think?
Not punished.
Someone who accepted Islam recently, and he was thirsty and he drank khamr, would you punish him?
No.
Why not? He drank khamr.
I'm merciful.
What?
Because it's...
Because he forgot. He forgot. Then, what's the application of the ayah? رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا وَأَخْطَأْنَا. Oh Allah, do not hold us accountable if we forgot. What does the ayah mean? When you are not held responsible. Okay? I'll stop here. The next issues are really interesting also. The willful murder and the other issues. But we will continue inshallah next semester. And that will conclude the sessions for today. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على محمد وعلى صحبه أجمعين. Any questions? Was the pure mistake the one where you did your best, and the mistake only the one that was due to negligence? According to one division, yes. Could you explain semi-deliberate killing? When you intend the act, but you don't intend the person. While in the other hand, you are allowed to do the act, but not to that person. You are allowed to hunt. But instead of hunting a bird, you hunted a human being. While in the other hand, you intended to kill, but instead of killing that person, X, you killed S. According to some scholars, there is difference. And when you intended to kill, that's a semi-deliberate killing. Let's have food.
Chef, after what page approximately are you responsible in that book? Or can you give us some?
All the pages.
Just what we covered. Man.
All the pages.
Book one.
No, book one is already over.
What about this one?
Just what we covered, man.
So there was mine.
Till Uthman. Till the end of Uthman.
The end of the book.
So the green book is till the end?
Just what we covered. What we
It's too
covered.
much.
What we covered.
Too much?
No, till the end, Chef. It's not we didn't go to the second book.
Killing while aiming at a bird is accidental killing. Yes, that's accidental. And it is a mistake only. So the diya will be reduced. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.